Hi guys, welcome to another topic on Java tutorials. In the previous few videos we talked about stack, hash tables and vectors, and today we're going to talk about a class called properties. It's a very interesting topic guys, very important for interviews and for exams. I'll see you on the other side guys. Alright guys, so we'll start off with this particular topic today guys, something called as property file. As you know, it's a very interesting topic and very important, so please listen very carefully and stay tuned. So we'll start off, whenever we talk about a Java file, whenever you have some data in a particular file which keeps on changing, for example, a user may have something called as a username, a user may have something called as a password, date of birth, hobbies, whatever different fields that a user may have. Now all that data normally should never be hard coded into my Java file. Normally it should be stored in a separate file, because whenever you store it in a separate file, updating it is much easier. So as the video keeps on going, I will show you some examples to tell you how it actually works. So we'll continue with this particular topic. When we talk about a property file, it's a separate file. So basically all the data of that particular user is stored separately in a property file, and you will have a normal Java source code which will basically connect to that particular file and get the data from that particular property file, or this Java file can store or update that property file also. So it all depends on how you want to use that particular property file. So the main point here is that the data will never be stored directly in my, or the data will not be written directly in my Java file, but the data is written into my property file, which can be used by this Java source file. That is the main point when I talk about properties files. So you can see the first point, the data in the project that changes frequently, especially when you talk about passwords. When you talk about bank websites, normally what happens is they tell you to change the password every 3 months. So when that happens, normally you should never ever code it in the Java file directly. It should be a separate property file. So the data which keeps on frequently changing, normally for that reason we should use a separate file. So next is if we do not, the main disadvantage of not using the property file is, if you hard code that particular Java file with all the data that you want for that particular user, for example username, password, date of birth, hobby, email, so on. Now what happens is, next time a user wants or changes the password, then that particular Java source file has to be recompiled, it has to be rebuilt, it has to be redeployed, and it may need a server restart, for which the client cannot use that application for almost 2 to 3 hours, which is a very bad thing guys. So that is the reason we should never hard code the data into our Java source file, but we will be using this property file. I will tell you a little later. So in this case, when we talk about a properties file, normally what happens is, the properties file I can write the data. So if for example the user's password changes, I do not have to change my Java source file, but I can just change whatever data is there in my in my property file, and I can just redeploy that file. So I don't have to recompile, I don't have to rebuild it, I don't have to shut down my server and then restart it. All these things are not required when you change the data in my property file. That is the main advantage guys. That is the reason we normally go for this topic called as property file. Okay, next we will talk about the properties class itself guys. Now in this case, when I talk about a properties class, the properties class is a subclass of a hash table. Okay, so obviously whenever we talk about hash tables, you already remember it contains something called as a key and a value pair. Every key will have a particular value. For that reason we have this, we already know about hash tables, and properties works the same way guys. It has also a key value pair. Now you may ask, what is the difference? Now when we talk about a hash map or a hash table or a tree set and all, normally they will have a key and value pair, which we can have any type of data you want, any type of key, any type of value you want. For example, I can have an integer value, I can have a string value, I can have a float value, I can have a double value. Whatever type of value I want, I can have it. But when I talk about a properties class and I want to store a key value pair, in that case the key and the value both have to be string. That is a that is a thing you have to know about properties class. So that is the main difference between your hash table, hash maps and property class, guys. So remember this, both the key and the value both will be of type string. That is the main important thing you have to remember here, guys. So you can see here the class name that we use is properties, and then the key and the value, the third point is that the key and the value both are string type only, right? It will not be any other value, any other data type. Next, the properties, basically the thing about property file is you have to load, for example, if you want to use whatever data is there in your property file, it has to be loaded into your Java file. Okay, from the Java file I can load whatever data I want, store it back into the property file also. I can update the property file through my Java file also. So for this, for better understanding on this, I will show you a small diagram on this, guys. Alright, please look at this particular diagram, guys. We have two different program files, right? Two different files here. One is your test2.properties, another we have something called as customer.java file. Normally, that is the extension that a Java file will have, a .java file extension, right? So in this case, we have two separate files, .properties file and a .java file. Now in this case, when I want to write some data about a user, for example, username, password or whatever I want, I should not directly write into my customer.java file. As you can see the cross mark there, it says that I should not hardcode the data into my customer.java file. Instead, what you have to do is you have to use a separate file called as a properties file. Now the name of the file can be anything. In this case, I have taken test2 as a name. Now in this properties file, you can see I have stored the data for that user. The user is Amol, password is aim1 and hobby is cricket. Now what happens is whatever data is being stored in that properties file can be used in your Java file. For that to happen, you have to use an inbuilt function called as load. This properties class has an inbuilt function called a load function, guys. This load function is basically used to load all the data which is there in your test2.properties file. For example, user is equal to Amok, password is equal to aim1, hobby is equal to cricket. All that data will be loaded into my customer.java file, in which a properties object will be created. That object will consist of all that data which is being loaded from the properties file. Next, if I want to update my properties file, I can. The way to do it is using a function called, an inbuilt function called store. Now using this store function also, whatever data I want to add into my properties file, using the store function, I can store or update the data in my properties file. So we will see a small example on this, guys. So guys, these are the important methods that are normally used in your properties class. You can see we have used, there is something called as a get property function there. This get property function is basically used to get the value for a particular key. So for example, in that particular properties table, you want to search for a value, then I can give a key, and using this key I can get the value. That is what that get property basically does. Get property is a function to get the value for a given key, right? Next, we have another function called as set property. Now the set property is basically used to set a new property, that is key and value. So in this case, I have to give two parameters. I have to give what key, at that key what value I want to store. So for that reason, we have used something called, there is a function, inbuilt function called as set property function. Next, we have another function or a class called as enumeration. Right, in this particular, using this enumeration, I can basically traverse through the data in my properties file. So for example, whatever data I have, I can traverse through that using that enumeration, right? All the keys, whatever I have, I can get all the keys which are there. Next, we have a function called as load. We have already seen with a diagram just now that whenever I want to get the data from my properties file into my Java file, in that case, I will use a function called load function. Now in this case, he has given two load functions here. One is for input stream class, another is for reader class. Now this input stream class is used for transferring the data in terms of byte stream, and we have a reader class to transfer the data in terms of character stream. That is the only difference here. Whenever a professional application is made, normally they will use a reader class, because the reason is it transfers the data in terms of character stream. That is a newer version, guys. Next, we will look at one more function, right? Before that, I will show you one more diagram on this, guys. So please look at this diagram, guys. It looks similar to what I have already drawn previously. You can see on the left hand side we have a properties file. On the right hand side there is a Java properties object. Now whenever I want to load something into my file, I will use a function called load, which will load all the data which is there in my properties file into the object that I have created for my properties class. So you can see at the bottom it says properties space p is equal to new properties. Now p is the object for that properties class. That object called p will contain all the data that is there in my properties file when I use a load function. And the same object called p can be used to call a store function to update the data from my Java file into the properties file. So this is what it does. We will continue with one more function there. So this is one more function we have, guys. We have something called as a store function, similar to your load function. This store function also has two two types, right? One is using a class called as output stream, another is using a class called writer. Now this output stream class is used for transferring the data in terms of byte stream. Whenever I talk about a writer, then it will transfer the data in terms of character stream. Now this store function is used for writing something or updating something into my properties file. Load is for reading from that particular properties file. Store is for storing the data into my properties file. So we will see a small program on this, guys. Okay, I hope you are able to see the program, guys. You can see here within my package collections I have created my program, and I have imported two different packages called as a util package and a IO package, guys. So this basically util package is used for, whenever I want to use the class called properties for the program to recognize this properties class, we have to import this util function. This star means all the classes within my util package it is going to import. Same with this, we have a package called IO package. Now whenever I am reading something or writing into a file, I will be using this package called IO package. So you can see here in this program we have used file input stream class, and we have also used something called as file output stream class. For these two classes to be recognized, we have to import a package called IO. So again the star means all the classes within that package will be imported. Next, within this class called properties demo, that is the name of my program as well as the class. And in this main function, for the main function you can see I have written also something called as throws exception. Now why do you think we have written this throws exception? The reason we have written this throws exception is because, remember, this file input stream class, whenever it wants to read something from the file, or the file output stream whenever it wants to write into the file, there might be an exception that that particular file may not be present at all, or that file path what we have given may be wrong. So for those reasons that exception might occur. The exception is file not found exception, right? So that is the reason we have written here as throws exception, guys. So that is the reason we have written there. Next, in this main function, first we will create an object called p for this class called properties, right? Next we have using a file input stream class to create an object called file input. Now this file input is an object which will be pointing to my file. Now in this case, in this file input stream constructor, we are passing the complete path of the file. So in my computer, the path of my file is so and so, and the name of my file is test2.properties, guys. Okay. So this is the file that we have. Alright, so the file input stream is basically used to read that particular file, right? The file name is test2.properties. So I will just show you what that file actually contains, guys. So you can see here, guys, it contains three data, right? One is your username, one is your password, another is your hobby. So username contains a value called, so username is the key, amog is the value, password is the key, amog1 is the value, hobby is the key, and cricket is the value. So we have three key value pairs here, and what we are going to do first is we are going to load all this data into my Java file, and I am going to print whatever data I have got or loaded into my Java file. So we will see now. So we will continue, guys. In this case, you can see here this load function is a function, I hope you remember I told you, to load whatever is there in your properties file into my Java file. I will be using this function called load. That is the reason we are using this function called load. And within this particular load function, remember, using this object p, we are calling this load function. P is the object of properties class. Using that I am calling a load function. And what file I want to load? I want to load file whatever is there in my file input object. In this case, file input object contains the file, or it is pointing to the file test2.properties. So basically it will load that particular file, and then I am just printing this p now will store whatever is there in this particular file. So p object now contains all the three properties that we have seen in that notepad file. So in this case, the system.out.println will just print whatever is there in my notepad. Next, what we are doing is we are trying to get a value for a particular property. In this case, this get property we have already seen. Get property is a function which will basically return the value for a given key. In this case, we have a key called password. I will just show you that notepad one more time. Alright, I hope you have seen, you remember this particular thing. You can see that password has a value called amog1. So what I am going to do now is, using that get property function, I am going to get the value for that particular password key, that is amog1. That is what that get property will basically do. So you can see here, this string.get property will basically return amog1 as my value, and that will be stored in this S object of string class. Now in this case, this will basically just print it, so it will just print amog1. Next, what we are trying to do now here is, we are creating a new property of our own, that is key and value both. So in previously we have seen, for load function we are just giving or passing only for get property we are just passing only one parameter, that is the key, and for that key it will return the value. But when you use a set property, I have to give both the key as well as the value. In this case, the key I want to store is food, and I want to store a value called rasmalai. So that is the reason I have written here. Now this object P will contain one more key value pair now. Next, what I want to do is, this P has been updated with this new key value pair. Now I want to write that into update my properties file. So that is the reason I am using this file output stream class now, for which I have created an object called file output. Now in this file output stream, I am passing the complete path of the file that I want to update to. So the same file I want to update it to. So in this case, it is test2.properties. So that is the reason I have given the same thing. In your computer, this path will change, guys. So do not write or copy this same path. So make sure whatever path is there in your computer, the same path you use. Right, so make sure that path is correct, and the file name should be the same. Whatever, you can create your own name, but make sure you give the correct name here. Next, with the extension, some people forget to give this extension, guys. Dot properties is the extension. You can use a text file also, but in this case I have used as a dot properties file. Okay, so you can use any type of extension you want. So in this case, the next line, we are using this p.store to basically store this particular value, whatever food and value, whatever I have created here. I want to update this key value pair into my file, into my test2.properties file. So that is the reason I am using the store function, and in the store function I am specifying to which file I want to store that or update that into. So in this case, this file output is pointing to my test2.properties, and I am just mentioning a comment. This is called as comment. So I am just saying that it has been updated by me, that is my name is Amog Deshmukh. That is what we are seeing here. I will just execute this program once, and you can see what the output will be here, guys. So you can see here, guys, initially with this particular system.out.println p, it is printing whatever is there in my file. So in this case, now one thing you can see here, I don't know if you have noticed it, initially the notepad had contained, I will show you now, just a minute, guys. Okay, the initially notepad had contained only your 3 different values, guys. I will just show you 1 second. So you can see here we had only username, password and hobby, 3 different keys. But I have also added one more key now. If you remember, I will just show you now. So in this case, you can see, guys, now we already know that password was already there, username was there and hobby was there, but we have added one more key called as food and rasmalai. That also has been added to my notepad file now. So that is the reason we have this, guys. And next, that is what is printing here, that is updated version of it. Basically it is printing that particular file, whatever is there in that particular file, guys. Okay. So please see the updated data, guys. You can see here, initially we had only password, then we had username, and then we had hobby. One more key has been added, that is food is equal to rasmalai. And you can see here the comment also has been added here. The comment says data has been updated by Amog Deshmukh, and we also have a timestamp here. That means at what time and what date and month, year, everything has been given when this file was actually updated. So basically this gives you a complete idea of how this properties works, guys. I hope you have understood it. I will also share in the description the link for this particular PPT file as well as the program. So please go through them learn well, guys, and make sure you are ready for the exams, guys. They are we won't have time for reading or getting ready for the exams, so make sure you understand properly. And if you do have any questions, please do message me. I am always open to your questions, guys. Thank you.